I'm here as someone who believes when there's something that's wrong that we stand up and we call it out. And so today we say basta, Reverend Diaz Sr. Basta to your homophobic heart, to your misogyny, to your xenophobic words. And the words mean something, but your actions, because you are in a position of power, also have incredible consequences. I'm here as a representative of the New York City Progressive Caucus, who also joined the Women's Caucus, who also joined the LGBT Caucus, because this is wrong. And the last thing I want to say, because you're going to hear from so many advocates, is my personal story about why this struck me. I'm also thinking about when I was 9, 10, 11, growing up in El Paso, Texas. My absent father had a couple things that he made sure that my mom followed, and one of those was to go to a Baptist Pentecostal church. And that's where I grew up. And I grew up around people like him in the way that he speaks about his religion. And I grew up in a church where in order to move through the conversion, you had to accept Jesus Christ into your heart. And if you understand who I am, you know that I was the best person in that church, the young kid who memorized all the Bible verses, who was the top Bible study interpreter. I was the best, but I did not accept Jesus Christ into my heart from people like him who demanded that, because I thought when Jesus entered my heart that he would kill me. And this is the kind of rhetoric that he's spewing out right now for people that we don't even know who are listening to it right now. This is why he belongs in a church somewhere else spewing his hate, not at the city council. And so we are urging all our members and our friends and allies to stand with us so that he moves out of this space and wherever he belongs, but not here, not in this democratic elected and space for discussion and debate. And it is so beautiful for the folks that are behind us right now that we are, with moral courage, standing up against hate. Basta, basta, basta.
Thank you. We've been joined by council members Rory Lanceman, Jumani Williams, and Brad Lander. And I know we'll be joined by more, and we'll be hearing from all of those who want to speak, obviously, among the elected officials. But Councilmember Diaz has not just declared war on the LGBT community. In many ways, he's declared war on women's rights and the ability for women to make their own decisions. Of course, a war on the women's right to choose. So it's really important that we hear from one of the fiercest defenders of all people in the state of New York, my friend, Cynthia Nixon.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Jimmy, for bringing everybody together. I'm Cynthia Nixon. I am here as a New Yorker. I am here as a woman. I am here as a member of the queer community. I am here as a mother of a trans man to say this kind of hate speak has no place in the city or state of New York, and this kind of hate speak has no place coming from someone who is an elected official. As you heard from Danny Drum, this is not new. We have been endured decades of Reverend Diaz's anti-woman, anti-choice, homophobic comments, comparing gay people to animals, to thieves, to murderers, to you name it. Now, apparently, he feels that we are not the scum of the earth. We are actually the rulers, the kings and queens of the city council and of the political world of New York State. But what I want to say is this is not a compliment. This is a backhanded, paranoid attack. And that you can call us animals, you can call us power brokers, both are dog whistles. And what we are is we're human beings, and the LGBT community has never sought to control the city council or the New York State government. The LGBTQ community has sought what everyone seeks, to be treated fairly, to be given the same rights and responsibilities and protections under the law. And there are people, not only the young people who are still so fragile in their emerging identities, who can be decimated by this kind of talk, but there are people out there who are very hateful and vengeful and violent against our community, and this is a dog whistle to them. And this is a signal when it comes from someone in power, when it comes from an elected, to say, yes, these people are not quite human. Yes, if you're looking for someone to attack, to beat up, or even to kill, why not choose these people? They deserve it. I want to say to Reverend Diaz, enough is enough. We need an apology, but we need your resignation. We are not animals, we are not kingmakers, we are human beings, and you need to acknowledge our humanity. That's all we're asking for today, and that's all we have ever asked for. And if you cannot grant us our humanity, you need to step down. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. I just want to add that, rightfully so, some of us are queens, in fact. So thank you so much, Cynthia Nixon, for your leadership. I want to next call on Councilmember Jumaane Williams to say a few words before we hear from my other council colleagues as well. Councilmember Jumaane Williams.
I want to thank Jimmy for bringing us all together. This was tough, and I think it's also tough because these things have been said for several decades. I'm standing here as someone who has never called for someone's resignation in my 10 years. I've never called for Ray Kelly's resignation. There was a colleague in the assembly that was put in blackface. I didn't call for his resignation. And just from my experience and me being a human being, that's because I always try to leave room for people to acknowledge their errors, for people to grow, for people to get better. And in this instance, what has shocked me the most is there isn't even an acknowledgement that something is wrong. So even in speaking with Reverend Diaz, there's no acknowledgement that anything is wrong with anything he has said for the past several decades. That means there's no way there for us to grow and to learn. So how then can you continue to support that? You can't put a Band-Aid, you can't put a healing on something if there's no acknowledgement that there is a wound. And you know, my best friend is actually, one of my best friends is a computer programmer. And so they have to set the space for applications to take hold. And some of the programming here that allows people to be hurt, that allows communities to be killed, that allows transgender women of more color to be murdered with impunity, are the language that the Reverend is using. Those things make fertile ground for people to be hurt. And lastly, I'm speaking as a member of the faith community myself. The things that he is saying has been used over history not only to approve slavery, to subjugate women. The color of my skin has been called a curse, and religion was used to say it. It was wrong then, and it's wrong now. You are not allowed to use faith or culture to hurt other people. And so I have to stand here with my friends and allies in all equity and justice and say that you just have to go. This is not the place for you. I think about the people he represents that are listening to what he's saying, and they have no way to express what we have to express here today. It's just astonishing that it's 2019, this language is being allowed to use. It makes no sense. And so I'm not happy to be here because I'm sad that we even have to discuss this. But I'm proud to stand with my allies and my friends once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. Councilmember Levine, and then Councilmember Landsman.
Thank you, Councilmember. You know, any Jewish person is all too familiar with the ancient line of attack that claims that marginalized minorities exert some sort of nefarious influence over the leadership of society or government. It's a libel which has been applied to the Jewish people over the centuries, continues to be applied to Jewish people today. And it's a libel that Reverend Diaz has applied to our brothers and sisters in the LGBT community, our colleagues in the City Council, and it is dangerous. It is dangerous. It stokes paranoia. It stokes hatred. It leads to targeting of marginalized groups. It is not acceptable. It sends a message to his constituents, some of whom, like constituents in every district in the city, are themselves members of the LGBT community. How are they going to be confident that they can come into that district office and get fair treatment to overcome the challenges they face? There's no way that a person spewing this hatred can continue to adequately serve a diverse constituency, and it's why I'm standing with my colleagues and calling for his resignation. Brevemente en español, el decir que cualquier minoría, sean judíos, sea la comunidad gay, que estén controlando la sociedad, el liderazgo de cualquier gobierno, eso se llama discurso de odio, se llama paranoia, se llama homofobia, y es inaceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to recognize, thank you, Mark, that we were joined by Councilmember Brad Lander. His bill is being heard right now, so we had to run there, but I want to recognize that he joined us as well. Councilmember Rory Lanceman from Queens.
So I wish the bigots would figure out who's controlling the government, the Jews or the gays. It's very frustrating for me. I can't figure out, who are secretly pulling the levers and where to go to get my bills passed. I don't know. If you didn't laugh a little bit, you'd spend all your time crying. We have members of Congress accusing different groups of controlling our federal government. Now we have a city council member accusing the LGBTQ community of controlling our city government. I guess everyone is entitled to their bigoted opinions as private individuals. They can be as anti-Semitic and homophobic and racist and Islamophobic as they want in their private lives. Nobody is entitled to be a public official, though. Being a public official involves a special responsibility to all of the public. We all take an oath of office to support and defend the Constitution, to conduct ourselves as members of the City Council in the best interests of all of the people that we represent. And in Reverend Diaz's district, as in every district, there are people of different sexual orientations and backgrounds. I don't call for someone's resignation willy-nilly. I have my fights and struggles and battles with my colleagues on this issue or that. But on the question of the basic dignity and humanity and equality of all of the citizens of New York, of all of our people, regardless of their beliefs, their orientation, regardless of anything about their identity, if you cannot accept that we are all fundamentally and basically equal, you can't be in the City Council. And, we've seen this play out amongst people who have said horrible and terrible things. There's an arc to this story. It's almost universal. There's the horrible thing that's said. At some point there's the contrition, and then you have to measure whether or not it's sincere or worth trying to move forward. In Reverend Diaz's case, not only is there no contrition, no acknowledgement of what he said, there's a doubling and a tripling down of it, and then in the context of his long history of homophobia and prejudice, I think it's impossible for him to continue to be a member of the City Council. And I hope that for his sake, his constituents' sake, and for all of our sake, he does the right thing and give another person an opportunity to represent that district. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lanceman. We're thrilled to be joined by the former Speaker of the New York City Council, who's been a tremendous ally of our community. Please welcome Melissa Mark Viverito.
Thank you. I want to thank Councilmember Bramer and all those standing here. I got to say, I'm just sick and tired. As I hear Jimmy and I hear Carlos talking about their personal experiences, of how they struggled and even thought about whether or not they deserved to be on this earth because of who they were and the struggle that they faced. To have this individual just be here in this space where laws are being created for this city, where policies are being enacted, where our responsibility as a city is to uplift all New Yorkers, to embrace all New Yorkers, to make everyone feel that they belong here. And his vile rhetoric that compares homosexuality to bestiality, that says that those of us who believe in reproductive rights are enacting genocide, this is just barbaric. And this is not just about the Reverend. This is about those that have emboldened him, because he didn't get here on his own. You have a Bronx County party that embraced him, that uplifted him, that pushed him forward. You have a speaker that created a committee and it gave him an assignment. This to me is unacceptable. And we have to stand strong. And everyone, including the Bronx Borough President, including Marcos Crespo, the Bronx County leader, needs to demand his resignation. Nothing less than that. I have love in my heart, but I have intolerance towards hate and bigotry and misogyny and homophobia. And he represents all of that. And so he has no place in this government. And he should be made to feel ostracized. And for him to try to play the victim right now is laughable. So I want to thank everyone that is standing here. I want to thank Jimmy for his leadership in bringing us together. But I'm really just sick and tired, that this kind of behavior and rhetoric is just embraced and pushed forward, and it has been for too long.
Jimmy, how many more do you have? We have just a couple of groups who want to say a few words, if that's all right. Planned Parenthood. Who is representing Planned Parenthood? Eli, Senator Strauss.
Hi, thank you for having us here today. I'm Eli Senator Strauss. I'm here as Planned Parenthood of New York City's political director. I'm also here as a proud member of New York's queer community to say, as we hope everyone knows, that PPNYC stands with all of New York's LGBTQ communities to denounce hate in all of its forms, which has no place in our city, and to say, for once and for all, that the diversity of our city is what makes it the greatest city in the world, and that is what we need from our elected officials. We are living in a time when homophobia and transphobia are rampant and resurgent, when federal legislation that targets the most vulnerable members of our communities is actively moving forward, and this language empowers and emboldens the people who seek to harm us and seek to harm the vulnerable members of our communities. It is especially troubling to see this kind of language from someone whose only job is to build a community that is built on equity and possibility for everyone who lives in this city. And that is not what Reverend Diaz is doing. Because Planned Parenthood is first and foremost in the business of healthcare delivery, we know that what people need in order to be healthy and well and authentic is to have resources and representatives that will embrace them for who they are and give them what they need. That is not what is happening here today. It is unacceptable. It would be unacceptable from anyone, but that it is from an elected official is all the more unacceptable. Thank you for having us here today, and thank you to the caucus for having us.
Please welcome Sami Namir, who is with Queer Misu and also a member of LID.
Thank you. We are here today because, as Melissa Marviorito said, we are sick and tired. As a gay, Latino, Puerto Rican, Council Member Ruben Diaz, we are sick and tired of being targets of his homophobia and his misogyny. If we control the government, New York City wouldn't have LGBTQ homeless in the streets. we wouldn't have LGBTQ people being target of violence and being killed in our streets. If we're being controlling the government, we wouldn't have thousands of LGBTQ, particularly transgender people and gender non-conforming people unemployed. So we are here today to say that our community remains one of the most vulnerable and marginalized communities in New York City. And it is despicable and disgraceful that this rhetoric is just making our community even more target of attacks. I will say this in Spanish. Nuestra comunidad LGBTQ es una de las más marginadas y vulnerables en nuestra ciudad. Es inconcebible que el council member Ruben Díaz esté atacando nuestra comunidad y utilizando su púlpito como concejal de la ciudad para atacar a nuestra comunidad. Nuestra comunidad no tiene control del gobierno. A lo contrario, aún sufrimos por la falta de recursos, la violencia que nuestra comunidad sufre. Así que estamos aquí hoy para enfrentarnos en contra de esa violencia, de esa homofobia que el concejal Ruben Díaz está utilizando su puesto como político en vez de estar protegiendo a nuestra comunidad. El año pasado soy residente de Brooklyn y miembro de Lambda Independent Democrats. In Brooklyn, I was attacked, I was harassed by a homophobic neighborhood, and the NYPD officers were not trained enough to file a report against my harassment. And so, like me and other people, transgender people, LGBTQ people are suffering attacks and violence in our streets. And words and rhetoric like Ruben Diaz Sr. are fueling that hate and that bigotry and make us even more vulnerable. So we are standing up against that hate, and Ruben Diaz Sr. is unfit to hold office and to be in this taxpayer-fund government body. So he should resign, and he should apologize. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have one more speaker who's going to speak for about a minute, and then we're going to take questions real quick. Michael Brady from the Bronx LGBT Caucus. Thank you.
Good morning. Words and actions have consequences. In the late 30s and 40s, that resulted in the death of 4 million Jews. In the 90s, it resulted in the death of about 1 million Tutsis in Rwanda. The rhetoric of Reverend Ruben Diaz Sr. is very similar to what we saw then, and we together, as a Bronx unit, as a New York City unit, must declare war on the Reverend. In about an hour or so, the Ethics Committee will be meeting, and we want to compel them and compel the members of the New York City Council to not just censure the Reverend, but expel him from the council with a 2/3 vote immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Andrew.
In your understanding, does the Ethics Committee have the power to expel him with his decision today, or would that have to go before the full council, or what is their power?
My understanding is that whatever action is taken by the Standards and Ethics Committee, I mean, ultimately the full body is going to weigh in. So I would hope that all of our colleagues who have joined in the call for the council member to resign would, if we are all at some point forced to vote on this, be willing to stand up and vote to inflict the most severe punishment allowed. And if that is, in fact, expulsion, we should all vote to expel Councilmember Diaz from the council. I don't know if that's on the table. Obviously, I heard the speaker say that anything and everything is essentially on the table here, but obviously Standards and Ethics is going to meet in a little while. I assume there'll be a thorough investigation and then ultimately a recommendation on what kind of punishment should be. Juan Manuel.
So, where's the speaker right now? Where's the speaker right now? And Councilman Young showed that letter from 25 years ago. Why the outrage now? Why counting you or everybody, why are you being disrespectful after so many years supporting him and the Bronx Democrats supporting him as a state senator and now as a council member?
I don't know where the speaker is right now. If you're asking, like, in this very moment, where is he physically? I don't know. But to your other question, as you may know, there was a Gay City News article published while the council member was running for election to the city council, and I was one of 2 elected officials to say that he was unfit to serve in the city council, along with then public advocate Letitia James. So I have been very consistent, even though I was running for speaker at the time and knew that that would hurt me with the Bronx County Democratic Party. I still, because it was about my integrity.
Do you think that hurt you with the Bronx Democrats?
You know, I think that it didn't help, but you know, that didn't matter to me. What mattered to me is that I remember, as a 24-year-old gay activist, 1994. I remember how excited I was that the gay games were coming to the city, and how me and my then boyfriend went to the opening and closing ceremonies and to lots of those competitions. And I remember the Reverend's comments. And I said in that Gay City News article, I will never forgive him, because at that time, it was before protease inhibitors, gay men and other people were dying all the time of AIDS. And there were some gay men who were dying in St. Vincent's or other hospitals. And the last thing they saw was the Reverend Diaz telling them that they were evil and that they deserved to die, and that people like them are going to spread AIDS all over New York City. How dare he do that then? I will never forgive him. That some men died. And the last thing they saw was his face on TV telling them that they deserved to die because they had sex with another man and they were evil and they were dirty. Shame on him. That will stay with me forever. That's why I was never for this man. That's why he should never have been in the city council. And that's why I've been consistent and called for him to resign.
Did you express displeasure with Speaker Johnson when he elevated this very important committee overseeing for hire vehicles? Did you express displeasure at the time of Speaker Johnson?
As you know, we were competitors in the speaker race, and
after he became speaker is over, he gave Ruben Diaz Sr. a very important new committee. Did you express displeasure?
Look, I was not happy with that, but that was not my decision to make. The speaker is the one who made all of those appointments. And, you know, what I felt and what I said, you know, is something that I know. He had the right at that time to make those appointments, and he did them. Dave?
I'm not taking the Reverend's side here, but just to be a contrarian for a second. How do we differentiate between what is going to be acceptable and not acceptable? I mean, what the point here is, he said homosexuals control the city council. Of all the things you and I have been called in our lives, big deal. That's not that big deal.
It is a big deal. A very big deal.
It is for his whole history of where you said in the past.
Well, I know you're playing devil's advocate and not defending Reverend Diaz there. It is a big deal. In fact, I think that by claiming we control everything, he is clearly sending a message to others that not only should we be feared, because of course the logical next step to that is that with our power, somehow we're doing something evil or sinister, right? He's not complimenting our power. He's not saying that they have all this power and that's great. He's saying, watch them. They've amassed far too much power. And then he doubled down on that and said, not only at the city, now they control the whole state, right? And it's the same kind of language that's been used against the Jewish community, right? That instills fear in others and emboldens their hatred. And with that comes the violence that comes after that. So make no mistake, it is not something that he was trying to compliment us on, just the opposite. He was actually speaking what's in his heart. And in a city council where there are 5 openly gay members out of 51, less than 10%, this man, yes, openly gay, Brian, this man is saying that's too much. That's way too much. How dare he? We had no representation for hundreds of years. Hundreds of years. And now that some of us didn't commit suicide and chose to stay home and run for office and get elected as openly gay people, he has the nerve to say that we've amassed too much power. It is about otherizing us. It is about demonizing us. And there is no question in my mind that when people in leadership positions say things like that, they cause violence against LGBT people. That is why it is such a big deal. That is why it is so wrong. That's why he should resign.
Councilman Ruben had some pretty strong words about, the Bronx Democrats, the speaker for bullying him. Do you agree with that statement?
Is she still here?
Yeah.
No. I do. I think that, not being an expert in Bronx politics, I do think that there has been support for Reverend Diaz in the past, and I don't hear a lot of denunciation. I hear some calls for apology, but I don't hear enough calls for resignation, and that would also be to the mayor, quite frankly. Enough with calls for apologize or resign. How about we take a stand? How about the leader of the city of New York take a position and call for him to resign? So that applies to those leaders in the Bronx, but it also applies to the mayor. Yes?
I'm sorry. Did you invite the speaker here, and did he respond, or did you invite him at all?
The speaker was aware of this. I did not extend a formal invitation, but obviously the speaker is invited to any and all events that he would want to attend. But he was certainly aware of the event.
Do you think that Corey's doing enough to call this resignation showing you called her for yesterday? Do you think he can do more as well?
Yeah, look, let me just say this. The speaker, as an LGBT person, and as someone who was called out here, is also a victim here. Right, so as a gay man, I'm not going to beat up another gay man when he was attacked here, right? And let me just say this, the Reverend Diaz, I believe, knows that Corey Johnson is not married. I believe he knew that, but I believe he said that intentionally, as the only gay married council member in the city council. I believe he actually said that Corey Johnson was married intentionally to raise that specter in that homophobic diatribe of an interview about two men together, two men having sex, two men being married, right? It was intentional. I believe he didn't make a mistake. He knows that Corey Johnson isn't married. He's served with the man for 2 years. It's absolutely outrageous what he did, and it was sinister, and it was very, very dark, and it was very wrong. Anything else? Oh, one last one. What's that? Yeah, but I think we have one last question, Andrew. I think we're way past time for apologies. He is very clear. He's not apologizing. He's doubled down on his hatred. And all leaders in this city, including the mayor and the governor, need to stop with the apology bullshit and call for him to resign.
Jimmy, do you expect him to resign, or do you expect he's going to have to be pushed?
Oh, I think he has to be removed. I hope he resigns, but I think he's going to have to be removed. Thank you.